Hey everybody, I wanted to explain why I think Kaspa can become a top 5 crypto this bull run. I'll be giving out all the reasons. Just before this, I want to say I know that people have been complaining about price, but honestly, looking at it, we could very well close above this trend line and still have a bullish reversal. So I'm not too concerned here, just letting nature play out as it does. So, what's the biggest reasons why I think Caspa can enter the top 5, and what exactly does that look like? Well, currently, right now, that would look like where Solana is, because Solana takes the number 5 spot, which would be a nearly $3 Caspa. The reasons why I think a top 5 position, whichever crypto it's going to be, is going to be a lot higher than that number, is because every single bull market is bigger than the last one. And we have not even started this one. Check my last video if you guys want to know the reasons behind that. And when we do, it's going to be much larger in scale than the previous one. I imagine it'll be something akin to 2017 to 2021, the wide, huge differences between these two runs here. And we are just starting to prepare for that. And we're getting some early accumulation from some of the whales for that reality. So, first, I want to listen to Anthony Pompliano, and he explains reasons why he thinks Bitcoin is going to be extremely bullish. And I believe most of these reasons fall into Caspa's court ultimately. And you guys are going to see why extremely shortly as we play this.
Great question. I think that Bitcoin's computational network is doing the single most important computational work in human history, which is it is protecting economic value. There is nothing else in the world that protects economic value like this. And so in a world that is littered with central banks and governments who have spending problems, who have national debts that are exploding, that are devaluing their currency, who are punishing 50+% of their populations and pushing them into poverty, and they're eating away at your economic value, they are essentially stealing from you. It's a silent tax. It's a silent theft. But if you think about the McDonald's worker who's been getting paid $12.50 an hour since 2012, they think they're still getting paid $12.50 an hour. They're getting paid less and less every single year. Don't even worry about the last decade. Just go since 2020. The purchasing power of the US dollar is down more than 25%, depending on which estimate you look at.
Yeah, that is true. That is the number, 25%. We're just about to hit 26% very shortly here. So people are getting decimated. It's very true.
So that means that for every dollar that you had in 2020, today you can buy 75 cents worth of goods and services. They stole 25% of your purchasing power. How do you protect yourself? Bitcoin is not the only solution. You can buy real estate, you can buy gold, you can buy a lot of different assets. But Bitcoin is the best at doing it over a long period of time so far. Now, it's an early experiment. It's only 15 years old. Still got a lot of time to go. Gold's thousands of years old. Real estate, obviously, very old as well. But Bitcoin is probably one of the most promising ones as well, because if it continues to get repriced by the world as the best asset to protect economic value, one of the things that...
And he's right there. And I think kind of his point there, and a lot of Bitcoiners' point, is Bitcoin's been the most consistent. So it's the one you're going to want to bet on in crypto. And that'll just always be the case. People will always bet on Bitcoin. I do believe Bitcoin will always be a number one coin. I do think that's going to be the case. But on the other hand, if you can only max do 600, 700,000 transactions per day, that's not enough for the person who is getting decimated by inflation to do anything, right? Obviously, the banks, we're going to go over that in this video, will most likely custody Bitcoin for people, and people will hold Bitcoin through their banks. I think that is almost guaranteed to happen. Actually, I'll show you guys in the video. I have the documents to show that that's the direction we're going in. But I would ask yourself, if you are extremely confident in the idea of Bitcoin and you 100% believe it's going to be true, why wouldn't you get into the silver version of that, the version of that that is actually transactable between all people? I don't understand why you wouldn't be all aboard onto that, right? So when it comes to a lot of people with Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin is the first one everyone gets into because they don't know if this tech is going to go anywhere. They don't know much about blockchain or crypto at all. And Bitcoin's the safest bet because it is going somewhere and it is going up. And I think we can all agree on that that's very obviously what's going to happen. But if you understand the tech, if you look into the tech and you understand what this is and you believe in the future, this digital future that we're going to have, then obviously now you start to open up the door to some of these altcoins surviving. But specifically, the best one that follows in Bitcoin's footsteps is Kaspa and is a scalable version of Bitcoin. It's like the evolutionary version of Bitcoin. If you had Bitcoin, but a version of it that was going to continue to evolve and keep up with the best tech possible, you get Kaspa. There's no other coin like it, right? Which is extremely important. And it makes it way more accessible to kind of the scenarios he's talking about there.
I think finance people have a harder time kind of wrapping their head around compared to maybe the tech people is what are the implications of this? And so if I said to you, if the root cause of poverty around the world is the fact that there are billions of people who earn economic value every day, they leave it in cash, whatever their local currency is, and their government devalues that currency. And so they fall further and further behind. They can't get ahead. The wealth inequality gap widens, and these people get punished. But there's a solution. They simply can save that economic value in a different currency. That currency can't be devalued. It can't be created out of thin air. It's not controlled by anyone. And it's going to protect their economic value and their purchasing power. All of a sudden, it's not very hard to see a world where maybe this one asset could actually lift people out of poverty, could actually have this global impact that would change the lives of billions of people. Now, there's a lot that has to happen between here.
And I agree with that 100%. And that's actually a huge reason why proof of work is extremely necessary, because it allows for the greater decentralized mechanisms of the network, and it allows for there to be tangible value behind the network. And the crazy thing, too, to mention is you may think years ago you would have thought, oh, that's just this country's currency or this country's currency. But this is a worldwide phenomenon when it comes to massive debt, massive inflation. Even the currency of the world, the US dollar, is getting hit extremely hard. And when one country begins to just print and print and print and pull money out of thin air to fund big technological advancements, which is what happens, other countries have to start to step on board as well to keep up. So we have entered basically a race to the bottom for every currency when it comes to its value, which is unfortunate for everybody. And this is why we are seeing banks coming in here and trying to get rid of some of the SEC's restrictions so they are able to offer crypto at scale and offer it to people through the bank and allow them to store it for their customers and allow banks to build on top of distributed ledger technology. So let's continue on, and here's some of the more points about Bitcoin, and I'm going to relate this why I think all of this just leads back to Kaspa.
Here and there, but I think that's part of the promise of Bitcoin and why so many people are excited about it is they say to themselves, wait a second, is this a root solution to a problem that has been around for centuries? You can go all the way back to ancient Rome or anywhere else, and people were devaluing these currencies. They were constantly trying to figure out how do we steal value silently from the people to enrich ourselves. Bitcoin is an asset that you can treat as a savings account. You simply continue to save in it, and you don't have to worry about what is it going to happen over the next week, month, year, etc. Now, one of the things that people look at that and they say, wait a second, but it's volatile on a day-to-day basis. Yes, but in the same way that one Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin, if you go back and look, one of the best examples of this, in 2016, the median home in America cost 664 Bitcoin. Today, it costs 6 Bitcoin. So what ends up happening is in dollar terms, we actually saw about a 50% increase. It was like $250,000, $300,000. Now it's over 400,000. Right? I think whatever it is, about 40, 50% increase in dollar terms for the median home between 2016 and 2024. So 8 years, 50% increase in that home. How many people's wages went up 50% or more? Probably not as many. In Bitcoin terms, there was a 99% reduction in the price of the median home in America priced in Bitcoin. Bitcoin literally made housing more affordable. And so when you think of it in those terms, what it does is it requires you to break the mold of thinking in dollars and now think in terms of Bitcoin. And so if you hold dollars, everything around you gets more expensive over time. Your coffee gets more expensive. Your house gets more expensive. The clothes that you buy, when you go out for a night to a Yankee game or what, everything gets more expensive. When you hold Bitcoin over the long run, everything gets less expensive over time. Your purchasing power increases at a faster rate than the rate of inflation, and therefore, literally every single good around you gets less and less expensive.
And that's the truth. That's the truth. That's why Bitcoin and cryptos with a max supply are the future, right? That's why Bitcoin just is the future. It has a max supply. And this max supply is actually deflationary because people will lose their Bitcoin, and that just happens, right? So it's just always going down. There's always less Bitcoin, especially when you add in the halvings and what's happening. We're always getting the velocity of Bitcoin is always starting to just slow and slow and slow down, which is extremely bullish because it's the opposite of any other form of currency, any other store of value humanity has ever had. Now, you may be able to point to, a painting and say, well, what about this one? Art's cool, but at the end of the day, it's not as liquid and transferable, and banks can't hold a ton of it for their customers compared to something like Bitcoin. And it's also not indestructible, which Bitcoin and Kaspa is. But the biggest problem you run into with Bitcoin in the future, the future problem with Bitcoin, and this is what is going to happen. If Bitcoin gets adopted, if this technology gets adopted, you and me and anyone watching this, we are not going to be able to transact with it. There will not be enough transactions for the normal person to actually just transact with Bitcoin how they want to. It just will not happen. And the situation that you're going to get is the banks actually controlling everybody's Bitcoin. So we go through our bank. So right now we go through our bank for US dollars. What's going to happen is everyone's going to go through their bank for Bitcoin. They're going to hold their Bitcoin inside of their bank account. And instead of a savings account, you're going to have your Bitcoin account. That's what is going to happen. And as soon as that becomes the standard of the world, then everybody can actually start achieving true value in this world, because we don't have true value in this world. Banks, companies can make massive mistakes. They can disregard all strategic endeavors, anything to do with strategy, because they're going to get bailed out. And the printers is going to continue to go, and more debt can be taken. And there's no reason not to take the debt because the currency is devaluing. And if the currency is devaluing, you might as well take out more debt and take on more risk, because if you don't do anything, you're just going to slowly bleed out. Bitcoin and Kaspa, a proof of work crypto with a max supply, offers the world a real transfer of energy that's pure and real, which is what the currency is. And that's the truth. The problem is, if you only become a Bitcoin maxi, self-custody does not become a thing in the future because of the scalability issues. This is well known. Michael Saylor, all these people will tell you, all these big Bitcoin maxis are like, well, that's no problem. You'll just hold it in your bank anyways. But I would say this, which is cool. I agree. This is where it's going to go, and that's good for Bitcoin. For what Bitcoin is, that is good. But if that is what's going to happen, which I think it is, then all cryptos are going to do well, and especially the next one that is literally it's like the twin to Bitcoin. That's a superhero, right? Kaspa would get adopted. And a bull run wouldn't really matter anymore. That's the truth. So banks adopting crypto, this is going to happen. They've already applied for it. Biden, said, no, put Gary Gensler, put the SEC in charge. So that's delayed. What are some of the other reasons why we're bullish on Kaspa specifically beyond this long-term outlook, beyond the outlook of crypto is going to be the future? Well, before I get to that, I do want to actually mention this very quickly to add to that point. Crypto is the future, is going to be what this next cycle is about. Because the previous cycle, right, this one here, no one cared what Bitcoin was. No one cared to understand. Very few people cared to understand what the technology was last cycle. It was Dogecoin. It was I put money in, I can make money, and I sell it. And we still see remnants of that in this cycle already, or the start of this cycle. I think we're just starting right now. And we're still seeing remnants of that mentality where everyone's just like, meme coins is what it is. That's life. But during the first bull run, the first notable bull run, 2017, this is where people cared about what is this technology. This is where that spike happened. And then as the markets retraced very aggressively, nobody cared anymore. Or the people who did care, who accumulated, who bought and held throughout the year to the next cycle, they're very, very well off, right? They've made it. So we had another cycle, which was the previous one, which was I started getting on board just kind of at the start, right? As this in 2020, late 2020, when this cycle started to take off. We had this previous cycle where now people don't care about the tech anymore. But behind the scenes, the banks do. And behind the scenes, Bitcoin is performing very, very well, even though we're not in a bull market. And we're seeing all the signs here right now where real mass adoption is actually happening, but we have a few regulatory hurdles to get through, which creates an uncertain environment. And this uncertainty is, well, which altcoins are going to survive? And honestly, if they're not fair launched or already playing a part in shaping and bringing scope to the current regulatory environment. So for instance, this is a CFTC bill. One reason why I like Stellar so much is because they're on the advisory board. So I have a lot of faith to know that crypto is going to survive. But all the other altcoins, we don't know how they can be affected. A lot of this is going to be determined case by case. And inevitably, even if this passes, they still have to go through the SEC and make sure that they're cleared on the SEC side of things. So a fair launch crypto like Bitcoin is the first one is going to pop into everybody's banks. And if regulation is very strict, Kaspa could be the only next one, right? Obviously, I think Ethereum would fit in there as well, just because for whatever reason, they're giving Ethereum a free pass. But if we do see another spike of, well, what is Bitcoin? What is crypto? People are going to sit there and they're going to understand and say, wow, proof of work is meaningful because it brings it tangibly into real life. Real energy is being used to back it up. It's not like something like proof of stake where, oh, I pay more money and then I get more control of the network. That system is very flawed compared to a system like Kaspa, compared to a system like Bitcoin, which is made for true fairness and an indestructible environment when it comes to crypto, right? We're not just relying on the software at that point for all of our longevity. We bring true, real power, real electricity into the system. And I think proof of work, now that Kaspa's here with the DAG structure, has an opportunity to kind of swing back at everything. Because proof of work has been seen as like this old, oh, that's a Bitcoin thing. You can't do anything with proof of work. We need to go to proof of stake. And people just accept the flaws with proof of stake. People just accept that, well, the rich are just going to get richer because they're staking, they're getting their yields, and that's just how it is. And they're going to continue to get more power over the network over time. It's not a great system at all. So if we do get banks involved, what I'm really saying here is the education part of the cycle spikes up again to a new level. Because if you go outside and talk to most people, they don't know what crypto is, they don't know anything about it. And I guarantee you, if their bank starts offering it, everyone gets educated because people start talking with their bank. Well, what is this? Should I be invested in this? Should I allocate some of my portfolio to this? And when everybody begins to do that, the education starts back up again, and people hit this wall where they realize Bitcoin isn't scalable. Bitcoin can't hit over 700,000 transactions per day. Well, what can? That's like Bitcoin. This is the only one. And that's the truth. So if you want self-custody proof of work, you come to Kaspa. Bitcoin will not have, there will be no self-custody with Bitcoin because of the limited amount of transactions. So the transactions will just be institution to institution, bank to bank every day. And that's the situation. Unless they upgrade the Bitcoin network, which the institutions won't want to do because that would not give them full control of over the network, right? Because the key thing here is with 10-minute blocks, what you have is everyone, if this gets mass adopted, everyone has to go through the bank and then the bank wins. But that kind of wrecks your self-custody unless you hold a large amount, right? Where it becomes worth it to even hold for yourself at that point versus the bank. And now you're back to trusting the bank. So I believe there will be there's a huge lane for room for Kaspa and a whole society, a whole culture based off of what Kaspa represents. But that culture and society is only going to be built up as people get educated. So we need to understand this right here is what this search term is. What is Bitcoin? Sorry guys, I thought you could have seen that earlier, but that's what the search term is. So when you're looking at this, people didn't care. They did not care last cycle, and that's why we got the meme coin. So what updates are we seeing with Kaspa that's going to make us very bullish going forward? So the Ghost DAG protocol, an evolution of it to DAG Knight consensus protocol. It aims to provide even faster transaction and confirmation times, potentially making Kaspa one of the quickest blockchain networks available, which is going to be absolutely huge when we talk about proof of work. People, when this goes through, and all these updates go through, like Rust language upgrade, which is going to make Kaspa even faster. It's going to significantly boost overall performance and speed. Kaspa becomes on the map even more. If regulations go bad and start wiping out most cryptos, imagine most cryptos get wiped out, but then Bitcoin and fair launch cryptos like Kaspa, the door is open for them to basically be held by banks and offered to customers. That's what you're looking at here. Okay, but I don't think it's going to be that harsh, but it is a possibility, right? It just is a possibility that can happen. Then there's some other updates like smart contracts. There's a lot of bullish elements here. So what else can we look at for Kaspa? Grayscale is considering Kaspa right now. So the adoption is happening. Grayscale is already here. They consider it a currency, right? Which means it's either a medium exchange, which Kaspa is, a store of value, which Kaspa is, and a unit of account. Very significant updates for Kaspa, guys. And if we close in the next 2 days above this trend line, I'm going to feel very comfortable here, right? I know on the daily we close below it, but that's not the important part here. People are looking at this on the weekly. And to give you guys the best comparison for this, if you guys remember, which you guys should remember because I've gone over it multiple times, Kaspa market cap, the high here is $4.7 billion, right? Right now we're sitting at $3 billion, which seems high. But when we talk about Cardano before the bull run, that is right here, $4.8 billion right here, $5.9 billion. I wouldn't mind buying right here before the takeoff. Okay. So if we take into account this bull run is going to be bigger than the last one because we're going to have regulatory updates, which is very bullish. It's very bullish for Kaspa because even if the regulatory updates are negative and the whole market drops, Kaspa is going to survive the regulatory update, any updates that happen regulatory wise. It's going to be able to stay on exchanges. That's the thing. People are complaining about Kaspa not being listed on exchanges right now. And they're like, well, why isn't Kaspa here or there or whatever? Well, understand this. If Kaspa gets listed on an exchange, it's not getting taken off by some legal system because it's fair launched, fair bullish, right? So sure, since it's fair launched, exchanges aren't really are hesitant to touch it because they have to buy a bunch of it. So for the exchanges, it's a little bit of an investment out of their own pocket. So they want to make sure that this thing's going to survive and thrive and people are going to want it before they just go out here and buy a bunch of it. But in a bull run, they're going to have so much money to spend and everything is going to be pumping. They'll onboard it quicker than you realize. That's what will happen in a bull run for something like Kaspa. So pay attention to that. But I'm thinking about this right here. Like this is where we are to when Cardano lifted off. And I had bought Cardano around this zone down here. You guys remember I made a YouTube video at the time right before we ended up breaking out. And I foresee Kaspa as the same situation, just a lot safer bet, because we do know and we do have a time frame now that regulatory laws are going to be passed when it comes to crypto. So for me, it's about the safest bet. And I think since though banks will be offering Bitcoin and we'll have all this like real institutional adoption is when it's accessible to the average person, or it's pushed into the average person's face. Like the bank is saying, hey, you should buy this Bitcoin thing, because now the bank's benefiting from it. That's when over time the interest for what is Bitcoin spikes up and people care. And then people realize its flaws, that it's only going to be held by banks. It's only going to be held by institutions. And then they find a good alternative. We don't know what the next bull market's going to look like. All we know about the next bull market is that we are getting institutional adoption. We are getting regulatory laws happening. And the US dollar will continue to get destroyed, especially with this monetary policy flip. It's probably more things I'm not mentioning, but that's what more videos are for. So again, not worried about Kaspa. I think we're in a great position here. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.